fall. Good afternoon, John Donovan. Marty Keller
Hey,
here
Marty
with
Keller.
you. Thank you. Here we are in our Intentional Living podcast for November 6th. And it looks like the country survived the election after all,
Is it over?
so far. Well, the election may not be over,
so
but we've survived so far.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the president
And
apparently has lost, and in true character, he's going to throw a tantrum about it, and that's fine. But what I find remarkable is the how much things didn't change after Tuesday.
yeah.
Looks like
Yeah.
the Republicans picked up seats in the U.S. House. Looks like they're going to keep control of the Senate. Looks like the former vice president will now become president after shifting a couple of states just as closely as Trump won them last time: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. And what's the most remarkable of all is that the control of state legislatures shifted by one state. So the political parties that controlled all the state legislatures before the election control the exact same legislatures after the election, except for New Hampshire, which went from Democrat to Republican.
Wow.
So from the perspective of partisanship, things seem to be a lot of status quo going on.
Yeah. And based on the vote, we're divided right down the middle.
Right.
I don't know if it's ideology um, by ideology, or I guess that's what it is.
One of the things that I mentioned to you before we went live, I'm writing an essay about the election, and one of the things that I've noted since the fall of communism or Soviet communism in 1989 and all the elections that we've had since then, we've been remarkably 50-50. This is a 30-year trend that hasn't changed at all. Nobody running for president has received even 53% of the vote.
That is remarkable.
So there's a remarkable stability in that, in the sense, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today is that from an accountability perspective, particularly the concept of we're always getting what we want, I wonder if it's accurate to say that we don't want one thing or the other. We haven't made up our minds, and for 30 years we've kind of wanted to be divided right down the middle, which from a practical perspective means that we don't adventure ourselves too far one way or the other.
The thought that just came to my mind is we've moved the adversary from somebody outside the country to people inside the country.
Yeah, well,
No
that's
more Cold War.
yeah. I don't disagree with that. As long as I'm going to externalize my internal demons, I got to have them somewhere.
Yeah. And it's good that they let you know by how they register.
Yeah, right.
There's a clear dividing line.
Yeah.
Good guy, bad guy, depending on your perspective.
Or to use the thing that's on the wall behind your right shoulder, inhale, exhale.
Inhale, exhale. Well, the thought I had that I wrote down on the board behind me, the issue is never the issue.
Correct.
It's my hope that we get to the motivation underneath all this screaming, yelling, pointing fingers.
Well, I'd like to
and it's
Go ahead.
It's right in alignment. It's right in alignment with the intentional living accountability process. And one of the constants, core constants of relationship, is own your projections and move towards your pain. So I think it's a perfect setup.
Well, if you're open to it, I'd like to share my personal experience this week, because maybe that'll give us an opening to explore that a little bit more. So what I noticed about myself, as you know, I've been involved in politics and government for my whole life. I started walking precincts when I was a 13-year-old kid, growing up in Royal Oak, Michigan. And I've been all across the spectrum. I was a communist in college in my first years after that. Then I became a Reagan Republican after that, and I've pretty much stayed on the conservative side as it's classically defined. I don't know what that means today, but on the other hand, I was toting up my experience voting for president, and I voted for losers more often than I voted for winners. So I'm not a good picker. And I used to sit there in the month leading up to an election and watch all of the races and look at the polls and get myself all excited and invest what I was reading with reality. And this year, for the first time in my life, I didn't do any of that. For the first time in my life, I conceived of the idea that whatever was going to happen, and it would be fine. And so what I've noticed is, I actually made up my mind. I wasn't even going to check the results on election night. Well, I did cheat a little bit because I was getting texts from friends about it. But what I've noticed is I feel remarkably peaceful. I feel remarkably at peace, as if I'm okay with what's happening. And I'm curious about the collective meaning of it all. And I'm sure I and millions of others of us will be pondering that question for months to come. But I thought I would be much more agitated, and I'm not.
I'm finding myself the same place. I'll think Biden wins, and it's not giddy, but it's like, okay. And then I play the scenario Trump wins, and I'm saying the same way. And it is what it is, and what do I want?
Right.
And from this vantage point of old age, it's been going on forever. It's nothing's changed. I mean, they talk about how messed up this is. We'll go back a couple elections and look where somebody stole one, or somebody stomped into the Supreme Court and said, "Give me my way." It's not been. This is not new. It's really not new. Characters have changed, certainly, and it's not new.
Well, and the things that concern us as a society have shifted, I believe. But in spite of that shift, and it had to be so, because when the Berlin Wall came down in 1989 and it ended the bipolar world, that happened right around the time the internet was coming into prominence.
Yep.
And by the year 2000, when George W. Bush was elected, the internet was starting to dominate commerce. And then you had Twitter and Facebook in the subsequent years after that. And all those things are external evidence of this much larger technological shift that our world economy is undergoing. And then you throw COVID in, which I think is just a reminder. COVID's there to remind us that we're just really not in charge.
Yeah,
we're just not in charge.
Yeah.
And nature is going to remind us of this from time to time, which is great. And So even though the 50-50 split seems relatively stable over the last 30 years, and you and I were in our 30s when there was actually clear winners, landslide winners. Even though that's the case, that the composition of our world and our culture and our society has changed. So just even along the lines of what you and I are up to, I mean, where was accountability in 1989? Hadn't happened yet, at least the insights that you're bringing to it. So
Right.
just in those 30 years, the state of understanding of trauma has shifted dramatically. In 1989, Van der Kolk was still doing his work with Vietnam veterans and doing the lab work on trauma research, and others were, of course. But the therapies that have been explored since then, they weren't available on a mass basis yet.
No.
And so that while certain things seem stable from a political perspective, at the same time, the world has changed dramatically, and opportunity continues to open up for us as a collective, us as a society, us as a species, to begin to take a look at these psychodynamic energies that have so much power over us, because we're still not really open to exploring the subconscious as a society or as a culture. And I think
Or
that's
even know, that it has an effect, or that our rational conscious mind, we should be able to do whatever it is and
right.
be okay. The other thing that happened around that time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the harmonic convergence, I think, was 88, 89. The I'm not sure what celestial deal it was, but that also happened in 89. I got into recovery in 1988. I got sober in 89. And my life trajectory shifted from a small sphere of concern, me, my truck, and my gun rack, and has been steadily growing to now it's a global. I hold that concern on a global level, where before it was very egocentric.
Yeah,
There's a lot
you mentioned that. I went to my first ACA meeting in 1989 also.
Yeah.
So
So
there it is.
Yeah, we're in the. I don't. The way I hold it in my mind is we're in the throes of a paradigm shift. It's like we're in that 40 years in the desert where something has to shift before we can move into whatever is waiting for us on the other side of this. And the other thing I see is what's happening is we're offering a clear, each side is offering the other side a clear picture of their shadow. And it's an opportunity, or even a nudge, to find a place that's effective. And what I found, the only place for me that's at all effective is internally, is taking the mirror and applying it to what's happening to me in that subconscious. Because I didn't intend to be alcoholic, batterer, abusive. I didn't intend that, and that's where I ended up. I did intend to end up here, only I didn't have a clear picture of what this was. So my intent was to live a life of peace. And then over the years, that intent has unfolded a worldview of myself and how I relate to me that contains a large amount peace, even in the face of um, all the stuff that's being thrown around. If he wins, we're gonna be all messed up. If the other person wins, we're gonna be all messed up. And see, the issue is never the issue. So if I'm not in this place of peace, what is it I'm not seeing externally that's mirroring for me internally? And I've dealt with my inner critic. I've dealt with the person that hates me. I've dealt with self-loathing. I've dealt with critical mind, obsessive critical thinking, um, and it applies to what's going on the outside of me now. It's like, okay, I'm open. I have this philosophy: nothing happens to me, everything happens for me. So I'm looking for the gift in whichever way this goes. And I'm not sure it has gone away yet. Did you? I haven't looked today. Has it gone away? Has somebody won?
It's pretty clear that Biden's going to pull it out in Georgia and Pennsylvania, and he's going to get enough electoral votes to win.
All he needed, I think, was Nevada.
Yeah, and he'll probably get that too.
Okay.
I mean, it's all very narrow. It's very close. It's a couple thousand
Yeah.
votes here and there. It was just the reverse of how Trump pulled it out 4 years ago.
Yep.
So
Got it.
all those states that he wasn't supposed to win, that he won narrowly, Biden's winning them back this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then in another 4 years, we'll decide whether that was the choice we want to stay with or change.
Right.
Yeah.
Have we talked about Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near?
No.
You know the book?
No, I don't. I haven't read it, and I believe whatever principle he was trying to get across is I can see that it's in alignment with where I'm at, even though you haven't told me yet. But
Let's check.
The truth is the truth.
Right. So Kurzweil wrote this book, I don't know, about 10 years ago, and he was talking about the rate of technological innovation. And he was proposing the theory, the hypothesis that with the dawn of the computer age, that technological information will double every year. And so he said, to illustrate that, he said, in the first 25 years of this century, we will have the same amount of technological discovery that we had for the entire century before.
Yeah.
And so he said, as that creates an exponential curve, and he said, the singularity is when every year is when we reach it, where in 1 year, we get as much technological innovation as all of human history before that.
Yeah.
And he said that's going to be 2049, just by doing the math.
2049, that's cool. I'll only be a young 100 years old.
Exactly. But he spends a lot of time in the book exploring the implications of that for culture, society, the economy, psychology, because the promise of that exponential growth is and he's seeing this through the Moore's law, which says that the amount of computing power and storage capacity and bandwidth is doubling every 18 months. And the cost of all this continues to drop. So he says by 2049, we'll have enough computing power and storage capacity to essentially create a virtual version of the world. He says we'll have enough computing power and storage capacity to reverse engineer the human brain. So
wow.
These are things that are just words to me, but I can get an inkling of how radical a shift that will allow spirit to play in. And so I think part of the, to roll back to what you were just saying about, we may change direction again in 2 or 4 years. I think that this pendulum back and forth through a narrow band that we've been creating over the last 30 years comes because we don't really have a clue what we ought to be creating for ourselves. It's almost like it's our defense against all of this coming technological change. Because we don't know what institutions we should be creating, because we don't know who we should see ourselves becoming. And of course, it's tough because this is an unprecedented time in history. So we have nothing to look back on and say, oh, it's like this period or that period, because things are changing so rapidly that it's difficult to get your handle on it, which is why I believe that the inner journey is the only way to tackle this, because the externals are going to be way too much for us to handle.
Well, yeah, well, I was wrong on saying I would understand what this guy wrote, because that's mind-boggling.
Isn't it?
Where it puts me is building the foundation to create the capacity to hold bigger, more expansive awareness. And that's what I'm doing with my process of accountability through the living intentionally process. Is I'm building the capacity to be in life. And we don't right now understand how magnificent the human body is. I mean, it's like we're trying to figure everything out, and yet we're ignoring the most magnificent thing that was ever created, which is our human body, our humanity. And my journey has been counterintuitive in that I know that when I connect my first chakra to the center of the earth or into my humanity is when whatever is going to happen happens. Then the eighth chakra and is always open and inaccessible unless it has a grounding rod. And then I just have this picture of this whoof, that whatever that is that gets us to the next level. It's not the end. It simply gets us to the next level of whatever that dilemma is going to bring. What do we do then? And I believe we're gonna have issues to work through, things to even build more capacity to handle.
So if you're open to it, I'd like to explore that in greater depth if we can. So what I hear you say is, this is my interpretation because this is my experience right now, John. So it's the human body offers me the grounding with which to deal with whatever's swirling on in the external world, whether it's the technology, it's the singularity, it's whatever. That what doesn't change is that the human body has these capacities and it has these features, and those don't change like our technology changes, at least not yet. And so we may be evolving, but we evolve at a pace that's too slow to see during a person's lifetime. So for me, what I'm up to here, no matter what's going on outside of me, is I want to know more and more about what my body has to teach me about my history, about my beliefs about myself, my self-conception, and the power that I have as a human being to create whatever I want. So for me, that's what accountability brought me and continues to bring me, no matter what's going on outside of me.
Right. one of the concepts I got around technology, um, even in the 50s, 60s, 70s, is that every technological innovation simply enhanced the what the five senses or what we could do internally. And now it's like, blown up. So technology is a enhancement of the human capacity that we have internally. And I don't know if I believe this. I'm contemplating this, that whatever the technology is, we can do without the technology. It's like when I'm talking to somebody in a session, I can feel what they feel when they feel it instantaneously, no matter how far away from me they are. I have sessions from people in London, Europe, the East Coast, and it's not even fast. It's instantaneous. It's um, and that is me being centered in my body with focus and purpose. Um, um, so I don't know where do we go from here. It's like,
Well, I think where we go from here is this for the person who's watching this for the first time, this is why we do what we do.
okay, let me give an example that came to mind. I spoke about that sphere of concern being limited when I started my recovery. In that limited sphere of concern, me, my gun rack, and my truck, I could not accept criticism. I would bristle. Somebody would get hurt. Either I would go hurt myself or use emotional, verbal, and sometimes physical violence on the person offering the criticism or insight. Now, when I hear somebody offer me criticism, I can hear it and stay centered and see the kernel of truth that they're offering me. It may not be exactly what they're saying, but there's a kernel of truth in what they're saying that offers me the capacity to expand. That's I don't know, simplistic. It's very powerful in that I can be in dialogue with somebody that is diametrically opposed to my philosophy and listen and then offer from that place. That's my advancement through my recovery process, through getting grounded in who I am, my authenticity, my genuineness, and who I am, how I express myself, human being.
One of the tools that you taught me, and we were actually working with this last night in our Rusty Nail Club meeting, comes from the commitment to A, accept myself just the way I am, because B, there's nothing wrong. And one of the tools that you taught us is the tool of giving myself permission when I do a behavior that I judge as wrong. Sometimes I judge my behaviors as I should know better than this. And what you taught us is I'll never forget the first time I heard you say this. It was somebody in the group owned up that he was late because he stopped to pick up a donut and he shouldn't be eating donuts. And you said, how about if you give yourself permission to eat that donut and know that you'll hold value as a human being anyway. So learning self-acceptance through giving ourselves permission, giving myself permission to be weak, to make mistakes, to fail to learn something I think I should learn, fail to apply something I think I'm expert at applying, because I hold value as a human being no matter what my behaviors. is part of what this is all about for me, because when I can own and love myself just the way I am, then I'm on a platform to do those major things, to be able to listen to criticism and hear it as value rather than an attack.
And I want to offer as an expression of love and concern. Where
Right.
before I saw it as something that was demeaning, diminishing, tell me I was wrong. Like the donut thing, when what I've come to understand is that when I couch me eating a donut as wrong, um, then I lose the opportunity to experience the effects of the donut, which offers me then the capacity to choose that again. Instead of I'm weak, I'm fat, I'm ugly, and which just creates the environment to where the donut seems more more pleasurable than not, or irresistible or tempting, or I get compulsive about a behavior when I get out of the right, wrong, good, bad. Now, my understanding, my experience of me eating a donut is that I have inflammation issues. And sometimes, you know what? I'm just okay with having an inflammation issue because I'm going to eat that donut. It's not wrong. It will have consequences, and I'm willing to accept those consequences, which I want to offer means for me, my experience is I eat a lot less donuts. Um, and getting the behavior, understanding that we are not the behavior, that the behavior comes from a conditioning, information that was told about us from our guardians, from the people who did care about us and meaningfully wanted to assist us and keep us from harm or pain. Um, that is that is the lie. That's not who we are. Um, and out of blame or judgment, I can feel the pain and then choose to move to comfort. In blame or judgment, the pain becomes, it's not the goal, but it becomes normal. It becomes what I understand to be the way it is, and um, because it's wrong, I need to be good, and just um, um, well, compulsive behavior. I know this is bad for me, and I don't want to do it, and I find myself doing it over and over and over. Blame, judgment.
Well, it occurs to me as you're explaining that. Um, hold on here.
That's cool.
As I was saying, what it occurs to me as I was listening to you speak is that every time I do any act of self-violence to myself, it's almost like I'm in my subconscious, I'm trying to return to my family of origin and to the experience that I misunderstood and misconstrued as love.
Correct. And that's motivated from the subconscious set of beliefs and perceptions that are unavailable to you
Exactly.
just by definition.
Exactly. And one of the things that we struggle with in our group setting is opening ourselves to the experience of unconditional love. And because that is not in my experience as a little kid, I'm and yet I have it mixed up with unconditional. And so I'm always trying to go back to it because that's what I want. I don't necessarily want the results of the self-violence. I want the unconditionality that I got that mixed up with. And uh, so here's what happened to me yesterday to illustrate this for those who might be listening for the first time. I had a wonderful day. I spent a couple of hours with a friend of mine that it was the first friend I made when I moved to California in 1983. And then I went up to Grass Valley and spent 2 hours with another friend that I met when I worked in state government. And these are people that I love dearly, and they love me dearly. And then I came back here and I got into the Rusty Nail Club meeting. And I noticed as soon as I got into the meeting, I was agitated and pissed off and unhappy. And I was looking at myself, and eventually I was able to share with the group, this is really bizarre. I've been immersed with love, and I'm in this group, and all of you people have loved me, and you've told me many times how much you love and appreciate me, and I'm pushing it all away. I'm still looking for love in all the wrong places, and I'm not allowing myself to experience, or I don't know how to experience the love that's actually coming my way. Intellectually, I know it's there. I can see it on your face. I can hear it in your words, but it doesn't penetrate to my gut. And so I continue to set my intention. I intend to experience love the way those who love me would like me to experience it. Because I can't not look for love. I can't not want love. I can't not attract myself to love. But if I have it mixed up with I'm not good enough, I'm too mistake prone, I'm going to end up betraying people before I get betrayed. That's kind of hard to use. That's kind of hard to use those dynamics to connect with other people.
Right, and all those dynamics are hidden from you.
Exactly.
And in the accountability process, one of my awarenesses around my truth was I didn't like myself. I don't like myself, to the point of I hate myself. And when I owned that and heard myself say it, I hate myself, and then took the breath and let the emotional body feel that. And what came to me is it is my intent to love myself. That got connected into that subconscious pool of information, and simply started manifesting out of that. And my job now is to simply pay attention to when the feeling comes, and simply feel it, be with it, and this accountability process happens automatically. I was playing War with my grandson, and we got two cards the same, so we played War, and I flipped mine over, and it was a low card, and I feigned, oh my God, this is too bad. And then he turned his card over, and it was the same card, so we threw three more cards down, and I turned up an ace, and he turned up I don't know, 6 or 7, and so we turned the cards over, and he had lost a joker and two aces, and he goes, you always win. And he went into a 5-minute crying about losing those. And I'm watching him, and didn't say anything to him. And he did that for about 5 minutes, and then we'd throw down another card, and it would kind of leave him, and he'd throw a card and win, get excited, and then then he forgot. He's mad. He's like he's sad because he lost his ace, and he'd go back into the feeling, and it left him. It left him, and he experienced himself in his own capacity, which my interpretation is he's learning how to feel, and in that process, nobody's taken away from him. Nobody's saying, "Oh, you don't have to act like a big boy." If I win, you should be happy for me. And I'm thinking, I used to say that to my kids, and if they won, I wasn't happy for them. I was feeling what he was expressing, and I was trying to make, oh yeah, so it's okay. No, it's I like to win, and so does he, and we get to play and experience ourselves in that. So it's really cool. Yeah. Really, really cool.
One of the things that I hear again as I listen to you and I reflect on my own experience, what I know is that it would behoove me to grant myself patience, because I know all these things. I've been doing this work with you and before you for a long time, and I still find myself getting pissed off if I lose.
Yeah. 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 Well, I don't know if it's good news or bad news. So do I.
Yeah, right.
And, and I'm able to laugh at myself and be okay with, I don't like to lose, and it's okay.
Right.
Um, and I can also revel in his victories and his winning, because he had done that to me a couple hands before, and he was all excited and happy, screaming and yelling,
Right.
and so, and I was feigning, oh, I lost my ace, you got my ace, you got my ace, oh, and there was some truth to it. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
So
So one thing I wanted to bring to us, this actually comes from our mutual friend Dan, who has been reading this book, The Molecules of Emotion
oh wow, oh
by
wow,
by Candace Pert, which I never heard of before. The science behind mind-body medicine, and I'm looking forward to reading. I just started it before I got on here with you, because again, the emotional body is where the gold is.
yes, and emotions create chemistry,
Yeah. And
and
chemistry creates emotions.
and the stuffing and the avoidance of emotion, no matter what it is, on what side of the spectrum you decide it might be on, is creating the chemistry molecules of stress, the cortisoids, the adrenaline, the stressor hormones that as a society, most people are stuck in the fight, flight, freeze and don't even know they're doing it, um, which has created the society we live in with the American Medical Association, American Psychiatric Association, the judicial system, correction system, law enforcement, all geared to get people to be good, missing this link that all behaviors in alignment with what you were told, which I classify as the lie. And instead of, Gabriel Mate said, instead of asking the question, why the addiction, why the avoidant behavior, why the crime, why not ask the question, why the pain? And address this internal motivational mechanism that is thinking it's doing the best for you, only it's highly misinformed about who you are and how it works. And the expression of motion is a human thing and a thing that I revel in, and gives me the ability to connect to myself and then you or whoever I'm speaking to.
Well, I love it.
Yeah.
You said on this podcast a number of months ago, that trauma is, at least in part, if not entirely in part, the result of emotions that were not permitted to run their course,
Yes.
and that if that occurs consistently and regularly enough, then there's a there's a I'm looking forward to seeing what Dr. Pert has to say about that in this book. There's a change in the electrochemistry of the brain, such that synapses and synaptic systems will now form around that defense mechanism, and therefore it
Yeah.
has a physical existence in my brain, and is now
Yes.
subconsciously controlling what happens next time I feel that same, I'm in that same environment. Now this series of responses, you called them a minute ago compulsions, will just manifest like
Yeah.
automatically. And
Yeah.
I've shared with you in the past that I have that around physical clumsiness issues. If I drop something, I knock something over, it's like in a nanosecond, there is a violent reaction. There's something wrong
Yes.
with me and I must be punished. And it's like, whoa, that's sitting here somewhere as a neural network waiting for that kind of thing to occur so that it can jump into action. And it's hard
Yes.
as an adult to look at that and hear you say, that's a defense mechanism that once protected me.
Yes. Yes. It's a benign energy. It's an energy that's looking out for you.
I know.
Only it's misinformed. It's ludicrous. It's cunning, baffling, and powerful. That when you said electromagnetic, most people understand that the Earth has a magnetic sphere.
Right.
And what it does is protect us from the harmful rays of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that electromagnetic sphere is safety. And yet, we as human beings create an electromagnetic sphere and then demean and diminish it and try to go to rational reason understanding and completely dismiss our safety mechanism and find ourselves at odds and in compulsive behaviors and pointing at the other person on the political side saying they're stupid, um, when everything we need is right internal, in the breath, in the recognition that emotions are simply information. They're not separate from us. Um, um, if you take the electromagnetic sphere away from the Earth, you get the moon, which is a dead planet. Um, and I'm not so sure how dead it is. That's beyond it's not my field, but we are human beings, planet Earth, biochemical, electromagnetic beings, motivated and operated through emotional impulse. And then we live in a society that wants you to be completely rational, figure it out, and don't be intuitive, don't be feely touchy, bubble headed, tree huggy, um, and it's demeaned and diminished, and it's right there, right with us, all the time.
Yeah, don't be tree huggy around me, John.
I got a story about that too. You know where tree huggers came from?
Forests.
A village, a village in India where this government business, I don't know, was going to cut down this tree in a village, and all the women held hands around the tree, and they cut them all down. They killed the women and they cut the tree. So tree hugger, it comes from that, and it's evolved into this wishy-washy, bubble-headed kind of person. And actually, it was originated from a position of, I want to say, dignity, strength, power, and willingness to see what's important and have value. Tree hugger. I'm a tree hugger. So, anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so next time we're in India, we'll let that be hegemonic. But
Okay.
no, but you're right. And the opportunity is to learn to appreciate all of these elements of our humanity. You know, we talked about this last week or the week before about and you started our conversation today with the observation or the remark about the magnificent human body and
Yes.
the gift that we don't just have it, but we are it. And learning to appreciate and deploy it consciously is what this work is for me. And I struggle, even as I listen to myself say what I just said, this little thing pops into my head is, you're not doing it right. And learning to appreciate that the little thing that pops into my head and says you're not doing it right is part of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something to be gotten rid of, even though that's my impulse. It's like, I got to get rid of that. Learning to give myself permission to have these energetic responses that don't conform to my belief about what should be happening, even in recovery.
Yes, to embrace the character defects, as you would a 5-year-old expressing his sadness over losing a joker and 2 aces. Observe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet that seems, I'll just speak for myself, it just seems difficult to retrain myself.
Yes.
And
It is.
therefore I intend to be patient and let God handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And be willing to not be in charge of it. God, even as I say that, there's a part of my mind that goes, screw that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Inhale,
I
exhale.
remember, inhale, exhale. I remember the time we were on a conference call other than the podcast, and you or somebody asked me how I was doing, and I had this big grin on my face I couldn't get off. And my response was, I'm reveling in my character defects.
Right.
It's like character defects. I was told in the 12 step, I don't know if I was told this is what I heard, that when I own my character defect, it becomes my character asset. In recognizing the defect, there's a skill set in that that goes over to the Star Wars analogy. It goes over to the good side. It goes over to the force for good. Anyway, I don't know where that came from.
You were looking at my character defects.
Yeah, yeah. So,
well, we have a few minutes left. Would you be willing to just explore that a little bit more for somebody who might be here for the first time? How does that which we criticize ourselves about become an asset?
okay. When I owned that in my dysfunction, I was controlling and that I'd become a master manipulator. I could manipulate people based on what I needed them to do or what I needed to feel. So I own master manipulator. Now, character, that's a character defect. The character asset is master facilitator. The skill set is the same as it was in my capacity to manipulate you, only now I wait for your permission to offer any feedback or information. Where before I just took it for granted, you need this, listen to me, and everything will be okay. And if you didn't, you were stupid or rigid or stubborn. So now it's same skill set, and I'm good at what I do. As I was good at manipulating people and making people feel bad, as difficult as that is to say, and the truth. So go ahead.
So what was the shift? From a practical perspective, how do I shift? It's a shift of attitude. Is that what you mean? Because the behavior is the same.
The skill set is the same.
Right.
The behavior went from arrogant to assertive. In my arrogance, I didn't care whether you wanted my information or not. You needed it, so I'm gonna give it to you. In my assertiveness, I see and wait for an opportunity to offer you information about what you want instead of what I want you to do. If you're looking to live a life of peace and you admit to emotional and verbal abuse of your spouse, I might ask you, how's that working for you? And would you be willing to own I'm abusive? And then see where it goes from there. But I don't do it without your permission. It's none of my business unless you ask me.
Right. So to shift.
And let me say one more thing.
Yeah.
Another aspect of this is that I become a good listener in this master facilitator place. before I would listen and get as much information as I needed to blast you, and then throw it back at you. Now I listen really well to what somebody's saying. Anyway.
Right. So the shift comes because it started with you're willing to own that you're a manipulator.
Yes.
And that's the information I wanted to share with the newcomer, that the critical element of accountability practice is the willingness to look at these things without blame or judgment.
Yes.
Because I could not look at my character defects. In fact, the very word character defect implies in my hearing something's wrong. Defect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something's defective. When it's just a characteristic, it's neutral, but I have a judgment about it that makes it bad. And so as I learn to own these things, I'm willing to face them fearlessly without blaming myself or making myself bad. And I do it in a supportive environment with a therapist, facilitator, group, whatever. Here's the process. I get to get in touch with the emotion of owning this truth about myself that I've made myself in the past wrong about. And now I'm just feeling what I was hiding by doing all that. Usually it's a feeling of shame.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can sit there, embody the feeling, be with the feeling, have my molecules of emotion flowing through my body and be present to them, there's a magic that occurs. Now, it isn't actual magic, but it seems like there's a magic where the negative energy that I was holding against myself dissolves.
Yeah.
In that dissolution, the energetic field is still there, but the blame and shame and judgment seem to go somewhere else or just disappear. And now I have an emotional field that's clear and ready to do something that I choose to do. What do I want?
And that's where you're able to make a different choice.
Exactly.
In the self-criticism, blame, shame, and guilt, there's a lockdown on possibilities of choice. You either got to hide that or be better, or you're screwed. You're nobody's gonna ever like you if they ever find out what's really going on inside. And in this truth moment, there's this space that's created around you that separate that behavior from you. Um, Solomon gets to experience himself, and through this maturity process of safety, he's going to see that there's something in him, and that he can tell what that is by where he finds himself in a behavior, and he can feel that all by himself. He'll know that all by himself. Um, yeah, and I think the what this does, what we call magic, is actually separate me from the behavior. I am not my behavior, and I just did that. That's guilt. It's a blip, and it goes, oops. What we consider guilt now is oops, 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 oops. And we're just stuck in this. I'm a piece of shit, and it just goes, oh, that didn't work. What do I want? It is my intent to do something different. It is my intent to be kind. It is my intent to do this examining process more, because of the feeling that it brings to me, the awareness that it brings to me about who I really am and what I really want.
Yeah. Well, we started talking about the election, and we ended up back where we always end up, which is what's going on inside me, and what do I want?
Mm-hmm.
So before we close off, is there any last minute thoughts that you'd like to share?
Um, what came to me is weeping, wailing, and the gnashing of teeth. It's like this political polarization has caused a lot of that. What it's also caused is here's what I know about both sides, because I've been on both sides, is that they both want the same thing, which is freedom, ability to express genuinely. And that desire is being expressed on both sides at a high level. And it's a maturation process. Um, and it's uncovering some of the things we're talking about. People will realize on their own, holy cow, what am I doing? What do I want? I don't know if that was profound or more confusing, but yeah.
Or both.
Yeah, or both.
Given that human beings are contradictory, oftentimes.
Yes.
That's fine. That's good. Well, before we wrap up, I want to just remind people, if you'd like to work on learning how to do this work in the accountability, which is really done with other people, you can contact John or me, and we can offer you some possibilities to connect with groups that are doing this work, or work with John directly individually. The information about how to contact us will be at the end of the podcast. So we invite your being connected with us, or if you have any comments, items you'd like us to explore or to explain better, please let us know as well. We'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I'd also like to say, if you email me, put in the subject line podcast, or something that refers to where you heard or saw me or Marty. So that, because I flipped through my email and so I may just like swipe it right out of the way.
You've been warned, people.
Okay.
All right. So again, if you get in touch with us, just put podcast in the subject line. We appreciate that. So John, as always, thank you for an enlightening conversation, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Marty.